God, whose very existence is controversial, to quote Jennifer Byrne, is the most omnipresent, most influential, most enduring entity in all of human civilizations, in all cultures and at all times. God is a subject over which great empires, nations, and religions have been built, wars have been waged, magnificent art, music, literature, and architecture have been created, and lives have been lived, and, I might add, and lost. We spent the past few weeks and months over here at the channel thinking, reading, writing, scripting, filming, editing, sharing, discussing, and debating about alternative ways of thinking about God, from the Bible to the Bhagavad Gita, from the Enneads to the ethics. The focus of the series was particularly on pan and panentheistic ways of conceiving God and the equation of the God-world relationship. We began with a short introductory what is pantheism, continued with a look at pantheism in the East, Hinduism, Taoism, and Buddhism, pantheism in the West, beginning with the Greek philosophers all the way from Thales to Plotinus. We looked at a moment in history where Eastern and Western thought met. We told a short pantheistic parable about a man knowing for saying short parables. We spoke about pantheism in the Middle Ages, scholasticism and Neoplatonism, followed by presentations on Christian mystics and philosophers like John Scotus Eriugena and his Paraphesion, Giordano Bruno, the enigmatic Renaissance mystic, followed perhaps by the greatest philosophical pantheist of the West, Baruch Spinoza, and we concluded by dipping into Judaism proper with a survey of pantheism in Jewish theology, from the Bible to Kabbalah and Chassidism. We had a whole lot more thinkers whose pan and panentheisms we wanted to get into and explore and explain. Some of my fave Germans, Goethe, Lessing, Schleiermacher, Fichte, Schelling, Hegel, and Schopenhauer. Some more recent thinkers like William James, Alfred North Whitehead, and Charles Hartshorne, and some epic Jewish thinkers like the Chida, the Shalah, the Maharal, Maimon and Ben Amozeg, Zeitlin, and Rav Kook. We'll have to come back to all these wonderful thinkers because that bittersweet time has come to move on to the next series, which we are also super excited about. The reason we spent all this time and effort talking and thinking about God is because I think that our God concept is broken and desperately needs some fixing. Our conception of God, whatever that concept is by definition our highest and most profound concept. The object of our ultimate concern, in the words of Paul Tillich, whatever that happens to be for us, is our God. But God, as God has been conceptualized by most, for most of human history, at least in the West, as an invisible, anthropomorphic, usually masculine, specifically fatherly and monarchical figure, the great other who transcends the universe, which it at some point created and governs, is frankly no longer a compelling nor persuasive concept. God, as Nietzsche's madman informs us, is dead and remains dead. But that's okay, because like everything, God must die so that God might be reborn again. The God of transcendence, otherness, separation, and remoteness must die, so that a God of immanence, closeness, sameness, presence, belonging, and unity, a God who transcends transcendence, might be reborn. A concept of God true to our highest moral and aesthetic aspirations, the best of our current sciences, the deepest of our religions, the most profound of our metaphysics, the truest of our experiences, the brightest of our thoughts, and the noblest of our ethics. Instead of a God who is abstract, petty, and divisive, we need a God who is concrete and expansive, who unites, the God of the mystics, a God who is everything and nothing. We create God in our image, and the images of God that we create end up in return creating us. The question, therefore, that we must ask ourselves is, what is an image of God worth striving towards, in whose image we can shape our highest selves? What self do we strive to become, and what vision of God will take us there? As we faintly grasp through clouds of unknowing towards the depths of a truer self, we may encounter such an image capable of precipitating a change of consciousness, a cajoling of the self to remake itself in the image of that which it really is. One which will allow us to see ourselves not as fundamentally separated, estranged, and alienated from one another and the world around us, but instead as deeply interconnected, interdependent, and fundamentally ontologically united with all that is. The logical trickle-down from a new highest concept of God, the new God, which mind you is also a super old God as we've been showing here in the series, might just force us to rethink everything we know, to see the other not as enemies and strangers to be protected from, exploited, and competed with, but as lovers and friends, as extensions of ourselves the divine self, to be loved, cherished, and cared for. It is my deep conviction that a more unitive and tender concept of God might just lead us to a more unitive and tender world, a world which we all really want, if only we were able to admit it. And that is why we spent all of these hours, days, weeks, and months reading, thinking, writing, filming, editing, sharing, and debating about God, because we are not happy with the status quo. We would like to see a new world, a better world, and for that, we're going to need a better God, and harder yet, we're going to need to work on being better selves, myself included. Constance Plumptre concludes her magistral general sketch of the history of pantheism with the following words. The object of this sketch has been to record the history of those philosophers who have risen against the indulgence of anthropomorphism and who have, even at the risk of torture or the stake, courageously maintained their views in repudiation of that shallow conception of God which would liken the infinite to a finite man. They did not regard God as a person speaking to them from without, but as a pervading, omnipresent power speaking to them from within. God was to them the all in all, the root and cause of all phenomenal being. This world, after all our philosophy and science, is still a miracle, wonderful, inscrutable, magical, and more to whosoever will think of it. With love, and on behalf of all that is dear and precious, keep seeking.